If They Can Do It podcast, the podcast that interviews absolutely ordinary people who do extraordinary things and wants you walking away thinking, hey, if they could do it, so can I. And so this week, this episode, I got to tell you, every single person that I have had on to this point has just been people who have inspired me, and I want to know more about them. But this week, we have somebody who meets that criteria. Not only that, but they have also inspired you as a listener. If you remember, I had an episode a couple weeks ago with Irving Dominguez, and in his story, he brought up somebody's name, Jimmy House, who had inspired him. And I've been getting recommendations like, Isaac, I need to know about Jimmy. What happened during the summer where he absolutely destroyed his best friend, and how could I get a best friend like that? That is what people have been asking me. And so over the course of the next 30 minutes, an hour, however long, we're going to be learning a ton from him about persistence, determination, friendship, family, all of those things. And let me tell you something. Jimmy does all of those things at 100%. Why? Because he doesn't know how not to. And so without further ado, Jimmy House, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, my friend. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you guys who are listening that recommended Isaac getting me on. I appreciate it a lot. Now let's take advantage of it and get rolling.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. And I can also verify it wasn't just friends and family who said that. So, you know, it wasn't like
awesome.
an uncle or auntie going to have Jimmy on.
Thank you. No, that's super pleasurable. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So, dude, tell us a lot about you, because I think what everybody knows who has listened to that episode before is they obviously know you're athletic. You wrestled in high school, but like, what do you do? Tell us a little bit of background on you.
I guess so. The way I describe myself, I like to describe myself as a little bit of a dual athlete. Basically what that means is I dive into powerlifting. Obviously, I do jiu-jitsu now. I teach and train full time. Obviously, with the wrestling background, that also bled into bodybuilding. So a little bit of everything that I can kind of dip my hands to and try to do it to the best of my ability, you know?
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. I guess, so I knew that you did some of that with like wrestling, which involves a lot of weight cutting, you know, bodybuilding, which that requires specific training, all of the things that you've done. The biggest question for me is, even if you look at your Instagram, you can tell just by looking at you what you're training for, because your body looks very different in different times.
Right. Totally.
How, outside of just what you do for training, how does somebody whose body changes so dramatically, how do you view your body? What is your relationship with your body?
So honestly, like what I talk about with people, like you go from a bodybuilding stage or a jiu-jitsu stage where you're in very good shape, low body fat percentage, and you really like how you look because you look like, you know, like an Instagram model or a superhero, however people want to describe it, right? And don't get me wrong, it's really cool to look like that for a certain period of time. But then for me personally, once you've kind of like starved yourself for a certain amount of time and you're feeling low on energy and you just want to eat a hamburger, you know, the body can get kind of old. So that's why I kind of find that having that mixture between jiu-jitsu and bodybuilding and then powerlifting is a nice mental balance as well, because when I go back into powerlifting, obviously I start raising my calories up. My diet is not nearly as strict, obviously. I start to get a little thick with 3 C's, and it does take a little bit to transition out of it, in a sense that like I just went from like really, really lean to now I'm looking kind of like not so lean, but I'm not that big yet. So there's like a transitional phase where, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a body dysmorphia in a sense where I'm not at one extreme or another. The way I describe myself, I'm an extremist. So basically I have to strive an extreme one way or another. There's like no in between. So during that in between phase, that's the only time where I can say that like I can look at my body, I'm like, nah. But even when I hit like that extreme, like thickness, like we talked about with 3 to 4 C's, I like that look as well for me. I like looking thick, a little bit bigger. I know that the strength comes with it too, so I've learned to kind of learn to love me on both ends of the spectrum, lean and thick. So
So what does that look like? Because I think a lot of people find it easier when they lose weight and they're lean and they're going through a diet, when they're going through all that kind of stuff. Like how have you learned to love both sides of that spectrum?
so anyone here that's listening that's done, that cutting or type of bulking phase, when you first start cutting, you're not that big anymore. You maybe feel like you're losing some strength, but you're not super lean yet. And then on the transfer side of things, when you're trying to bulk up, you're not lean anymore, but you're not super big yet. And again, it's that transitional phase that usually kills people. So like I'll hear about people trying to go for a bulk, but all of a sudden they don't look lean anymore, so they go right back to cutting again. But you can't really put on effective muscle that stays with you if you are only bulking for like a month or two at a time. Like a bulking process should be, an extended amount of months, sometimes even years, for you to see muscle that stays with you when the next time you get lean. And the same thing kind of goes for cutting weight too. You got to kind of just sacrifice and put your head down and just grind, because at the end of the tunnel, like I talk about that extreme, generally for me at least, I like the product. So my best advice to anyone going through that is that you have to get through that first like month or two where you're transitioning your body out of its previous look. And then as long as you're diligent, you stay dedicated to it, you should like what you see in the end.
Wow. Dude, I like that. What got you into everything, like just fitness in general?
So it started when I was very young, actually, and I was actually when I was exposed to weightlifting, I was probably about 3 or 4 years old, because I would be at home and my dad had our like little garage gym, and he would be working out all the time. He would dedicate himself to losing 50, 60 pounds at a time, right? And I would see him go through these different transformations. And I would say as soon as I was old enough to comprehend the movements and what he was doing, probably realistically, if I had to put a date on it, around when I was 5 or 6, I started learning like basics, like how to curl, how to press, how to squat, little things like that. He bought me a little Sports Authority like weight set with a little thin little metal bar and little weights and stuff like that. And that was kind of my start. And so basically when I started lifting when I was a kid, to be honest, I really didn't like it. And it was never something where my dad actually forced me to weightlift with him,
Mm-hmm.
but he had me doing it at a young age with the thought of, later on in life, it may amount to something, or, it help with confidence, or just help with athletics, or maybe just overall, making friends in general, give us something to relate with. And so I kind of toughed through it because I'm just generally an obedient person. I like to obey my parents. I typically don't like to go against whatever they tell me to do. So knowing that my dad wanted me to lift weights with him, I just kind of stuck with it, even though like there was really days where I really didn't want to do it. He would wake me up in the morning on the weekends to go lift weights when, my other friends were either sleeping in or playing video games or whatever, like first and second graders are
Mm-hmm.
doing at that time, But I'm thankful for it because it has paved the way for me to create something for myself later on in life. And I continue to going down that direction.
Wow. And so that kind of lifestyle, is that kind of lifestyle, and what I'm hearing is that it's kind of been instilled with you, hey, honor your parents, obey adults, and that has kind of taught you discipline where, hey, there's going to be things you don't want to do, and you just do it whether or not you want to. And it sounds like that has translated to everything that you've done. I mean, just nose to the grindstone. Here's the steps it's going to take. Are you going to be obedient to the process and do it?
Correct. Yeah. And so I would say growing up, my relationship with my parents is very unique. I have a lot of respect for both of them. And so going against the word in any way, shape, or form is, even till now, is something that is hard for me to find in my DNA. Even if like I feel like I might be in the right, it's hard for me to really branch out and do something that I know they won't like. We developed that respect for each other over time. I've been an only child my whole life. So really at home, they are my one and only family, and that's something that I've always tried to strive to keep as I've gotten older. Those morals that I had as a kid, I try to keep them now being 24. Just that obedience, as you talked about, and like you said, that does bleed into different things like discipline when it comes to fitness or competing or just other aspects of life where you don't want to do something, but you just kind of suck it up and do it because it'll be worth it in the end.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, even just that, I mean, I think that that foundation is something that, even though you don't know any different, like everything has been built on that. And I guess I've never really thought about it before, that how important it is just to have, even like you have two people like your parents there that you just trust implicitly and honor them to the point of, it's like, hey, my word is my bond. Doing something to honor them, obeying them is an important thing. And, you know, I sometimes I forget how healthy that is to, if that can't be your parents, because maybe you're in a situation where that's not,
Right.
who is that person who, you know, just loves you and wants the best for you, that can be that figure, you know? And I think that's where everything's built on. And I think that's where a lot of people may not have that in their lives. And all of a sudden, like, I think about that and I'm like, wow, that's really sad, you know?
Correct. And with that being said, I talk about my relationship with my parents, and I can't say that I'm anything but blessed because, yes, you're right. There are people out there that don't have a good relationship with their parents, or maybe their parents aren't around, or, you know, maybe their parents, what they want them to do isn't necessarily the right thing, you know. And so this isn't me going on live telling you to always listen to your parents no matter what, you know, because just like anybody else in the world, they can always be wrong. However, like I talked about, there's a certain level of respect and obedience developed with my parents because of my specific upbringing, where a lot of what I do now is in respect to making them proud of me, whether what I'm doing now is what they want me to do or not. It's always with the end goal of making them proud. And so, you know, if I had it my way, I would make it to the top of the world. I'd be able to pay off my parents for everything they did for me. I'd be able to buy them a house and make them super comfortable when they're older, and just kind of flourish in the happiness and knowing I was able to kind of give back in some way, shape, or form. You know, that would be a good ultimate goal for me to have, and I would like to get there my way.
Wow, man. And that's probably because not a lot of people know this, but the amount of influence and leadership that you've had, you know, with people like Irving and just other people who are in a part of the House Strong family there. I mean, that's probably made House Strong even more important, because when you're talking about fitness and when you're talking about just an industry like that anyway, it sometimes has a reputation of being kind of like grimy and a little bit sleazy and a little bit not on the up and up or dependable, or, you know, that kind of thing. Like even going to the gym, people flake out, you know, on doing something like that. And so, I mean, I think that's a lot of what has gotten you the influence that you have is how dependable you are and how much you are there for even yourself and other people.
I appreciate it. And so the way I think about that, because you're completely correct, the gym or the fitness industry, you know, it has as many ups as it has just as many downs. That's just the reality of it. Not everybody's going to be perfect. Not necessarily everybody that you look up to on Instagram or in the gym is going to be a role model. Because I think a lot of the times, certain people maybe get in a facade that they're bigger than they actually are, and they use that for some good, but then at the same time, maybe these people get into this false reality to where they're better or they're more important than others. And so the thing that I try to instill with myself, more importantly, that yes, you could label me as a power lifter, you could label me as a gym rat, a gym bro, whatever you want to call me. But at the end of the day, I see myself as a person with morals and a very unique personality. And because I see myself on a level of equality with everybody else, I think that's what really helps me bring people to the brand, because I really don't, excuse my French, I really don't give a shit how much I lift. I don't give a shit what martial art I do. I don't give a shit how many people that you know follow me. It's more so about being a person with others, and it doesn't matter if it's your average Joe Schmo that just walked into the gym or the Super Bowl champion that just signed up at EOS. Like, I treat everybody the same because everybody deserves the same respect until shown otherwise. And that's just how I choose to live my life. And I find that it works well for me because, more importantly, it helps me remember that my morals come first, no matter how strong, how big, how many followers, how many this, that, and the other thing that I get. At the end of the day, I'm a person.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed about you, and even just, you know, going through the House Strong Instagram and your Instagram, is like, just like what you said, like, until proven otherwise, if somebody's connected to you, if somebody, you know, is a friend, they're family. And if you're going to celebrate with them, you're going to cry with them when they cry, and you're a leader at that. You will be the first one to do those things. And I can just tell at the different things that House Strong has been at, like, you're the first one there. If somebody's lifted something they haven't before and they did it for what they were training, bro, like, you are the biggest clapper. You are like, you're right there with them, man. I love that. I love that because not a lot of people even have that community, particularly in the fitness community, that is genuine and when the rubber meets the road, you'll be there, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
So, dude, in building House Strong, you've gotten some opportunities, man. Like, okay, so I grew up watching professional wrestling. Ultimate Warrior, my jam, right? Like, Four Horsemen, 90, all of that, right? And dude, to have Goldberg on the ropes, see you, point at you in the audience, come down and give you a hug, not just because, oh, that's Goldberg, right? But somebody who you look up to. Man, how have things like that happened? And then, you have Mr. Fletcher with the Iron Wars and all of that kind of stuff. Like, tell us the story of all of that, because you've impacted not only people locally and your friends, but other people who just you run into.
Yeah, and I just have to forewarn, excuse me if I start crying, because it's been a rough couple days, and this subject in particular it just hits me in a certain spot. I'm gonna try not to cry, but just fair warning if I do. When it comes to the Goldberg stuff, so that's a very interesting story. Basically, I was 3 years old watching. I was only allowed to watch certain things. Like I talked about, my parents care about me a lot, so the parental control, even though it was 1996, they didn't have one. They kind of had their own manual one, right? And so when it came to pro wrestling at the time, like WWF and stuff, necessarily wasn't what a 3-year-old should be like watching or emulating himself after. And so, it's great content now being 25 and watching replays of it, but being 3 years old, maybe it's not the best thing for a little kid to watch. And so, the one person that I was allowed to watch was Goldberg, and he was on WCW, which was the cleaner of the two shows, in my opinion. And so with him, for example, my dad was really into comic books, so he really was inspired by superheroes. His favorite was Superman and all that stuff. And so when I look at pro wrestling and I think about Goldberg, he kind of fell into that superhero role for me because, well, I'm 3 years old. I don't know it's fake. I don't know any better. And he just came in there. He defeated all the bad guys, sometimes 3 to 4 to 5 at the same time. And, he was unbeatable. He went 173-0. And at the end of the day, despite all of his intensity and his ability to just manhandle anybody that he sees, you still see him going to the crowd and picking up a little kid or having what does John Cena do? The Make-A-Wish type of stuff with kids with cancer and different life-threatening illnesses. And so you see this guy that's just a monster that can defeat anybody that comes in his path. And then you see somebody with true compassion and a heart inside of it all. And why wouldn't you want to model yourself after that, And so the next 21 years, I basically, anything and everything that I ever do is in some remnants of how Goldberg does his stuff. I like to think that I'm one of the most intense people you ever meet, but I also like to think I'm one of the most kind-hearted people that you ever meet. And it's a balance that I always try to perfect because, it's like a light switch. If I flip my intensity on, I could be the most intense, the most passionate, the most focused person in the room. And you flip it off again, and I could be the guy that you're crying on the shoulder. I could be the guy that's going to charity events, helping out a kid with with a life-threatening illness,
Mm-hmm.
And being in a place in my life where I have the opportunity to do on a smaller scale what I saw my childhood hero do, is super humbling. And so where that comes into play is that. Going back to CT Fletcher, a few years ago, I saw him advertise an event called Iron Wars. And I had just started getting back into powerlifting after taking a break. Basically, I did high school wrestling, then I did bodybuilding, and then I did powerlifting for a few years. I gained a lot of weight, didn't like it, so I started jiu-jitsu, lost a bunch of weight, and then I started bleeding into powerlifting again after I gave myself kind of that mental break. So my strength started going up again. I started getting close to 700 on deadlift, and I saw this thing for Iron Wars, and I was like, well, let's make a trip. I talked to Irving, I talked to my other close friends, Matt, Jacob, and we brought another couple guys with us at the time, and we went down there. And my one goal was just to show everybody there, which the most of the people there were just very big names in lifting, show people who Jimmy House is and what Arizona can represent. And so after that, the next year, I'm just like, well, what if I just bring an entire team of like 30 people down to Iron Wars and show people what really Arizona is all about? And then the next year turned to 40. And so after building a relationship with CT Fletcher, I've had a couple talks with him because he's very good friends with Goldberg. And I just find this to be all but coincidence, And so, I would tell him about, Goldberg has inspired me greatly, this, and that, and everything. And CT actually went out of his way to talk to Goldberg about me and tell him why, like, I'm more than just a fan, why I'm special to him. And because I could pull up a message that basically says, like, I talked to Goldberg about you the other day. I was like, oh, really? Like, do you mind if I ask what happened? Well, he said, well, Goldberg told him, he's like, well, can you tell me about this Jimmy House kid? And CT was like, Jimmy House is, he's extremely talented, very kind-hearted, this, and that, and just said a bunch of very nice things about me. And to me, that was like that over the hill type of thing where Goldberg was like, wow, maybe this person's like more than just like the regular fan. And so fast forward to Mr. Olympia of 2019, he was doing like a guest appearance there, and me and Irving and my friend Matt and my mom waited in line for over an hour just to meet him. And then I'm sure you've seen that on my Instagram. I just started breaking down into tears because it hit me like, wow, like everything that I've ever done and everything that I've ever sacrificed and everything where I've always been where people have tried to pull me in one direction and I just chose to stay my path. Like moments like this are created because if I chose to go down a normal path, or if I chose to let peer pressure influence me when I was younger, when people wanted me to go to parties, or people wanted me to do drugs, or people wanted me to stop working out because it was lame, or it's because or people made fun of me because I didn't want to have a girlfriend, and all these different things, everything just hit me at once where I'm just like, wow, every single thing that I sacrificed, it's right in front of me, and I'm meeting my childhood hero who people would die to meet, and somebody that's infected like so many people. And it's just, for me, it's very emotional because I just put in a lot to what I do. And so knowing that all the different sacrifices that I've made has had the impact on the person that kind of led me to where I am now. And he was able to see what I do and tell me to my face that I've inspired him in some way, shape, or form. Like, there's no better feeling than that. And then you fast forward to the SmackDown where he got me and Irving and my friend Adam tickets, and he pointed down from the stands. And so the story with that is basically he does his skit with the Fiend, he spears him, he goes off. And we're like, oh, dude, that was sick, blah, blah, blah. And I sit down as if like the scene's over, like they cut to commercial break. And then Irving's like, dude, he's coming back. Because he walked down the aisle to like as if he was exiting, and then he waited for the cameras to cut off. And Irving's like, dude, he's coming back. And I'm just like, no fucking way. I was like, oh, no way. And I'm like, yeah, and he's coming down. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? He's like, go. And so we were in the second row, and so I had to jump over chairs to go to meet him at the fence. And Irving basically, so he recorded him leaving, and we're like, oh, okay, he's done. And then all of a sudden, he's like, dude, he's coming back. I'm like, oh, shit. And then he tells me to go, and he pulls out his camera just in time to catch me, like, run into his arms. And it couldn't have been any more perfect. And it's funny because when I turn around, you see me screaming, and it's like I just hit, like, the heaviest deadlift of my life. Like, just so many emotions. And of course, I started crying again, right? And but it was cool because the people around me, they kind of asked me, like, what that was about. I explained to them, and they all thought it was a really cool story. So, yeah, man, it's just it's extremely humbling to think about, and yeah, this definitely gets me emotional for sure.
Wow, man. I mean, there was probably times in what you were talking about where you were talking about everything that you sacrificed, and you get to meet him. He gets to tell you, like, not only like, hey, you're the guy. Oh yeah, you're the guy my friend told me about. Like it wasn't just like that, but all the sacrifice that you put in. I mean, I'm sure there's specific instances that you pull up in your head of like, wow, that sacrifice was worth it. Being called this was worth it. Missing out on this part, like all of that was worth it. And, I think a lot of people, when it comes down to it, like that is a question that they have for themselves. Like is going my own path, is doing what I know I should do, is that going to be worth it in the end? And dude, that's just beautiful that like you've lived a life that is like, no, I've had to make those sacrifices also. And you can look that person in the eye and say, no, seriously, look at me. It's worth it. Like this sacrifice, you're not losing anything. You're putting it in a bank in the future and it will pay off in there, man. Like that is so beautiful, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and yeah, you're right. There was like the way I tell my friends, there's this flashback that went through my head. He's talking to me and I'm doing my best to retain everything he's saying, but I couldn't help but just like literal like flashback, almost like movie type flashback where I just flash back to high school and like my freshman sophomore year where you know I was made fun of for certain things, made fun of for being too nice. People took advantage of me for being too kind to people, like different things like I talked about, like people would want me to go to parties or there'd be some body boxing thing. And because I didn't want to go to the body boxing thing and go to the gym and train, I was called certain names that suggest that I don't have courage or heart. Mm-hmm. Right. And all these different things when you're young and you're in high school, don't get me wrong, it got to me for sure, but I just tried my best to stay the course. And it's an honor to be in a place now to where I can share my story and others actually want to hear about it, because it could have very easily went a different direction.
Yeah.
And I look back at those moments that seem like they were yesterday, and all of these just add up and accumulate together. And it's just it's so surreal to me that all these different things, if had not gone exactly the way they did, my life would be completely different, which is why I'm a huge advocate that everything in life happens for a reason. And if you wait long enough and if you search for it hard enough, that reason can almost always be positive.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like that's just crazy. And I kind of feel how like what you were just talking about, I'm like Rolodexing in my head. We're going like, wow, like life could have been, instead of talking to you on the computer, I could be in jail or in prison right now. Right. And all it would have taken was one or two decisions. And that would have been the only thing that could have happened. That would have been the only option, you know, down that road, man. And, you know, you have a community that you've built that is centered around those things. Like, what do you want in life? Do you really want it? And are you willing to sacrifice for it? Because if you don't have it now, that means you have to give up something that's in your hand now in order to grab what you want. Dude, what do you do? Because I'm sure, like, your heart, you have such a big heart. What do you do in those instances where you see in a person and you see what their potential is and you know what they want, but like your heart breaks because they're making the wrong decisions, or you know that they're taking from their future and they're taking from the person who you see and who you know they are. I'm sure that's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, it's probably especially in coaching or in any type of leadership position where you set a responsibility to yourself to help others, that can be one of the hardest things that you have to deal with, which is the struggle of wanting something more than somebody wants it themselves. And so the reality of that is, as I've been told by various mentors, is that you can't want something more than somebody wants something for themselves. Whatever, you can lead a horse to water, but the horse has to drink it, right? And so when I see people like that, of course, I give my all to them, because I like to think I've accumulated enough experience to know what certain things take, and I love to set people up with the tools necessary to be successful in certain aspects like that. But yes, I have encountered things where, you know, I feel like I'm putting in more effort into this person than they are themselves, and that's just an equation that's never going to work out, unfortunately. And so I've had to come to the realization at times where, like, you know, I can't run myself thin doing things for others where they don't want it bad enough for themselves, you know. And, you know, if you don't want it for yourself, that's totally okay. But me as my own person, acknowledging my self-worth, I have to kind of learn how to step back and let you show the initiative first before I become the guy that's helping you get there, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, is a certain person taking the initiative or the certain steps to better themselves? Like, how are they going about things, or are they just relying on somebody else to kind of do it for them? These are things that you kind of look for and pick up behavioral wise, and you can kind of tell early on, like who's the ride or die, who's the guy that's going to stick with you, you know, as opposed to like maybe just doing it because it's trendy or feels right at the time. Like once the motivation leaves, what do you got after that? You know, because motivation is so up and down. It's the dedication and persistency and your ability to overcome adversity is what gets you to your goals, not motivation, unfortunately, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a hard truth that a lot of people that a lot of people, and I mean everybody, I say a lot of people like, oh, everybody else needs to learn this, but we all do, right? That
Right.
really people aren't built relationally to have 20, 50, 100 ride or dies. You can't give 100% to that many people.
Yeah.
And so like, who are your 2, 3, and to be quite honest, it can probably max out at probably 5 people who are, no matter what, 100% of the time, you know, that they will be there. And then everybody else in life kind of rotates, and not because you fall apart, but like there's those natural things, like you don't go to the same college anymore, or a person gets married, you know? And I think a lot of people forget that like you need those people around you who are your ride or dies and who will be there no matter what. And that is what makes letting go of the people who are doing something else, that makes it easier, because you're not trying to gain somebody's approval or like trying to keep somebody from leaving you, you know?
Correct. I agree.
And sometimes in life it's easier than others.
Right.
Insecurity is a funny drug.
yeah, definitely.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, and that's just it. We all have it, and you know, even though you know what you're supposed to do, sometimes that knowing is a lot easier to do than other times, for sure. And so, right now, we were talking before we hit record. You know, your year is built into like seasons, right? Just like, you know, football season, basketball season, and then you have like these different sports and different things that you're doing. What are you working on now, man?
So right now, as you can tell by my cheeks, I'm in powerlifting season. So yeah, I've been putting a lot of time in. I have a coach that I've been friends with on Instagram for a long time that's helping me out. So we're striving for something big here. Probably, I'm assuming around summertime. I haven't competed on a platform since December of 2018, but I've been powerlifting training ever since. Still, like, it never stopped. I'm at a point right now where thankfully I'm stronger than I've ever been, and I'm still progressing. So I'm just kind of planning on keeping it going as long as I can. And then once it comes to the point to where it's time to transition back to jiu-jitsu, just put it on the platform and just go all out. And because this could very well be my last time or my last stint 100% focused on powerlifting, you know, with some of the other goals that I have for my life.
Wow. What are you? Okay, so I just to give people a concept, because some people are not going to see the video of this. So what do you deadlift?
So currently my best deadlift was done in October of 2020. A few months ago, it was 765.
Oh, sweet baby
And we've been chasing that 800 for the last couple of years now, and I really feel like I'm right there. Just gotta be patient and test it at the right time, you know?
Dude, that's crazy. And so powerlifting, you know, in order to get set a record for yourself again, that also has to converge where if you're competing, you kind of have to time it so that they happen at the same time. How do you do that? How do you make that happen so that you don't overtrain and you come over the hill and start going down the other end?
Right. And so, forewarning, I say this not to necessarily brag about my strength level, but once you get to a certain level of strength where you're lifting numbers that are high up there, that fine line becomes even thinner, and that timing needs to be even more precise, because let's say I just choose to max out my lifts just randomly on any given day. That's essentially the concept of building a building up for X amount of time and then choosing just to demolish it and restart the whole process again. And that process, the stronger you get, becomes longer if you're doing it strategically, you know, if you're actually doing it week by week and really making sure that you get to a point of progression and before you get to a new like max per se. And so that's why I'm very picky when I choose to compete, because I want to make sure that I'm like nearing wherever I think I'm about to plateau, like at that peak of progression, to test my numbers before I'm ready to break back down again and rebuild that building back up. And that goes for people of all level of powerlifting. But to answer your question, the best way to go about it is to run some type of program that implements some type of concept of progressive overload, right? That could be a very basic concept, basically meaning where you're starting very light and then working heavier or more intensely each week as in regards to like volume, again, weight. Each week goes heavier. You take some deload weeks in between, and maybe at the end of a 12 to 16 week block, you test to see if you've increased your numbers, type of thing, right? And so depending upon what type of program you're doing, it could be very basic, or if you're with a coach that knows how to customize it to your specific needs, it could be very customized. Regardless, like if you're a beginner lifter or just any lifter in general, even if your thing isn't powerlifting, it's always good to implement progressive overload in your training, because otherwise it's going to be hard to progress, and then also you're going to risk the chances of extreme fatigue and injury, and if this is something that you want to do for the rest of your life, even if fitness is just a hobby, you want to make sure that you're somewhat strategic about it and have somewhat of a plan going into it.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, and I think that there's a lot of applications, even if somebody is not a power lifter, right? And somebody is just going after something, easing in, developing patterns and discipline is almost just as important as what you can do at a given moment. Right. This plan, if you're starting lighter and you're wanting to go heavier and heavier, when you're starting lighter, of course you could probably lift heavier. At that moment, you could probably lift heavier if you wanted to. It's not about how much you can do at a given moment. It's about that you have a goal and what is necessary today to reach that goal. And that could be, if you have, I don't know, $30,000 in debt, you're not going to wipe that out in a day and achieve that goal in a day any more than you're going to do the deadlift of 800 in a day of training, right? Yeah. Right. But can you not go to Starbucks that day and then bank that? You know what I'm saying? Right. And can you get these little disciplines? And I think I've had to learn that, man, because I think my mind is, I'm a very passionate person, and I'm a very 0 to 100 really fast. And I prove I care about something by how hard I go. And I really have to rein in that inclination to go, no, if you love it, learn it, develop disciplines, even weightlifting in particular. I think a lot of people think weight and don't think about form and actual technique and lift lighter, get that in place, kind of a thing. And dude, I mean, I just think those principles by itself can help a lot of people. And by a lot of people, I mean me. I could learn a lot from that.
Well, I think you actually said it perfectly the way you described it. It's interesting with all the free tools out there as far as like YouTube or books or like just general like people you see at the gym that are willing to give free advice, how foreign of a concept of like something like a progressive overload or some type of program where, yeah, you're not going 100% each week. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the gym, I've hit a set, and then somebody with good intentions makes a comment to the effect of like, oh, dude, you could have done way more. Why'd you stop? Or whatever. Mm-hmm. And to your point, that's not the point. Like the point is to build yourself up, as we talked about. And it's not necessarily proving how hard you can go for a short period of time, because you could drive a Lamborghini at full speed, but eventually that's going to just crash, right? It's more so about proving how disciplined you can stay for a long period of time, building yourself up to go your hardest, understanding that we as humans, physically and mentally, can only have that 100% type of go mentality for so long before we crash physically or mentally. And so that's like that thing that's hard to perfect for me, for you, for anybody, is knowing when to pull back and save more for the next day or the next week. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody's perfect at it, but if you can strive to always leave a little bit in the tank for the next day, in my case specifically with powerlifting, you're going to be better off because, recovery is better, your performance is better, and overall your strength is going to thank you for it.
Yeah, bro, but that's not sexy. That's not going to post on Instagram when you're doing like half
Yeah,
of what you could lift. You know what I'm saying?
right. Yeah, and so that's funny because I think social media in a lot of ways has affected people when it comes to that because I mean, I've fallen into it too. Everybody loves a good PR post, you know. Everybody loves getting hyped up by their friends or their followers by hitting a new number. But the thing is that you could hit an even bigger number if you held off on a PR post for a few months and put in the work that nobody really cares about. That's not sexy. That's not aesthetic, you know. And then all of a sudden now you've increased your deadlift or squat 20 to 40 pounds instead of just posting about a 5 pound PR, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe now you have a torn quad because of it. You don't know. So I think that's important because I see a lot of people loving the strength game of fitness, which is awesome, but you have to go into it with a plan because it's much different than just going in saying I'm just going to hit an arm day or I'm just going to hit a quick chest day on the machines or do some flies. Like when you're playing with heavier loads, bench press, deadlift, squat, you have to be careful with how you do it because your body will let you know when you're doing it wrong, either sooner, hopefully not later, you know? So
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And I think a harsh reality that a lot of people have to learn. And I think more so, and honestly, I don't know. I just have a lot of fitness people and like trail runners and stuff on there. Is the reality is, let's say you were to pull 800 tonight. You go to the gym, you pull 800.
right.
The reality is, 2 weeks from now, the person who saw that tonight, they aren't going to care.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the reality is they aren't going to care. It is your job to care about your goal. And if people want to follow you along to the ride of what you are doing, like, then let them do that. And of course, bring them along. And if you hit a goal, let them celebrate with you. But the goal isn't for their celebration. Like, you're just letting them in onto your road that you've chosen and the discipline that you've chosen to get to that goal. And dude, all of us lose sight of that. You know, I know even with this podcast, right? Like those little insecurities and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's just helpful. And I know, I'm not sure if it's a pessimistic way to look at it, but like, people won't care tomorrow. You know?
Yeah, it's true. You can't expect people to care about your goals more than you do. It's unrealistic. And I think, yeah, sometimes we get in this facade, like people are always waiting. Well, I got to keep Instagram updated. Like the people are waiting, you know, but like you said, they don't care. I mean, like they care, they're happy for you, but they're not going to stop. They're not going to call off work to make sure they don't miss your next Instagram post type of thing. So yeah, like you said, you got to do it for yourself first. And if I did go for 800 tonight, the only person that really would care would be myself and my coach that I would piss off. So it's just not worth it. Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, I think yeah, there we go. I think you're back.
Okay, cool. All right, great.
All right. Yeah, and I think a good way to put it is like, I have my little guy, he's 1 year old, handsome little dude, right?
Awesome.
And I post him on Instagram, people will be like, cute, like, yay, I'm going to like it. But in the end, it's my job to feed him. It's my job to make sure that he has what he needs to grow. It's my job to do that. I can't expect people on Instagram to take care of my child any more than I could expect them to take care of my goals, right? And I think putting it that way, it makes it sound silly, but your goals are your baby, and quit letting people on Instagram quit putting the responsibility of feeding your baby to the people on Instagram. And I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah, it's true. And sometimes it's hard to like catch yourself when you're the person doing it, you know? And that's why sometimes it's good to have a mentor or a coach to get you on some type of structure so that you're not tempted to go down that route. I think one thing that I'm actually blessed with is, again, we talked about my ability to be obedient, or my ability to be coachable, which would be the synonym of that in the powerlifting world. And as soon as I got with my coach, you know, I gave all responsibility to him, like no questions asked, like, you know, he's going to make me earn the next time that I get my new PR, you know, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And I just kind of let him do his thing and just put in the work and no questions asked, everything. But if I'm my coach, sure, if I'm feeling good that day, I might go for a new PR, like that 765 that I did on the video. Like me and Irving and my friend Amir and Fred, we just went to the gym and wasn't really sure what was going to happen, and things felt good. So I was like, dude, just throw 8 plates on. Let's do it. Let's just go for it. Yeah. And it happened, and it made for a good video. But like I talked about, when we talk about not letting Instagram influence you, that would be the opposite example of that. So
Yeah, and in the end, you know, that's all it did. It was make a good video. You know,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
oh, dude, I love it. Well, man, thank you for spending time together. We have one more question, and I ask every single person who comes on this podcast. I ask them this question, and that is going to be, man, and in particular your story, right? Because I mean, we're talking about pulling 800 pounds is your goal. That's not a lot of
Right.
people's goals. and they're going to go, you know what, Jimmy, like your discipline. I'm glad you grew up in a great family. I'm glad that you said no to the things that you should have, and I didn't. I'm happy for you. Like, yeah, Jimmy. Okay. Slow clap for you, buddy.
Sure.
But I'm not sure I'm capable now. It's either too late, I'm not disciplined enough, I don't even know how to start, and life is too busy, so I'm not going to start. What would be your encouragement to those people where they're at right now?
So when it comes to stuff like that, you have to hit a point to where you're able to be realistic with yourself, and at a certain point very hard on yourself, and understand that when the term can't or cannot is used, a lot of time that's just a perception of our own reality, what we believe to be is possible or not. And so that can be very, very easily switched with a mindset change when you start telling yourself that yes, you can do something. And it's true when we talk about people prioritize what's important to them. And so with that said, if something is important to you, like making a lifestyle change or whatever the case may be, it's your job to prioritize it, to make the change. And as we talked about earlier, it's no one else's job or responsibility first but yourself. And that's like the hard truth that you have to tell yourself, and you have to come to that realization before you take that first step. And then once you've learned to accept that and make that change, then you start reaching out to people that have been there before, that have accomplished similar things to what you have, that have gone through the struggles that you have. And I'm more than willing to bet those people are willing to help you as far as advice or giving you perspective on things that you haven't seen before. But before anything like that happens, you yourself first have to make the change. And if you never do, it's no one else's fault but your own. And that's just the cold hard truth of it. But if you can learn to accept that, you can use that as a driving factor to move forward and accomplish great things with your life.
Yeah. Dude, that's so good. And it's simple, right? Like the stuff that you're holding on to right now in your life and the priorities that you have in your life right now have gotten you to where you are right now. And so if you don't like that, you don't hate what's in your hand. You hold on to what you need to hold on to, and you let go of the things that you need to let go of so that there's room in your hands for the things that need to be in your hands. And if you do that, then the outcome will just be different. Like your priorities shift. And if those are really going to be your priorities, change is going to happen because life can't be the same doing that. And dude, I love it.
If I may add.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, go.
If I may add, first off, I wanted to remind you real fast, just in case. If you don't have time, it's cool. But I don't want to disappoint the viewers that asked about Irving and mine story.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But before that, I just want to make sure that we didn't forget. But before that, what I wanted to add is a few years ago, I hit a point to where I kind of decided to say, screw fear, screw that fear of not being accepted by others, and go out and own what you want to do. Like, and when people talk about manifesting their goals into reality, like speak your goals into reality, I really believe that to be a real thing, because I've had points in my life where, say, I have this like super deep talk with Irving where I'm just super passionate and I'm super inspired, and I'm saying we're gonna do this, and this, and then all of a sudden within the next week I have like 3 different things pop up that to me are more than just coincidence. And I talked to Irving, I'm like, dude, do you see that? We literally just had this talk 5 days ago, and all these things just happened. And so ever since I started changing that mindset to where I'm not afraid to own what I want to do with my life with whoever it is, that's when I've really started to see like change and really good things happen. The CT Fletcher stuff, the Goldberg stuff, my own personal accomplishments. To me, it's a thing, and I'm just going to keep going with it. And it's up to you whether you want to kind of believe that type of thing or not. But I'm a big believer in before you accomplish something, you have to speak it, but you have to speak it from your heart and not just say it just to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in speaking it, having that process of I'm not speaking it, therefore am entitled to it. I'm speaking right. it out because I'm taking ownership of it, and I'm saying this is on me if this is going to happen. And then things start rolling because you're making new neurological pathways because something is repeating. Like we all have repeating stories in our heads, and a lot of time we aren't getting what we want because of the story. And so we have to redo it, speak all of that out. Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up, man. That is so good. All right. So now, and this is for you, Jess Christensen, one of the people who asked for this. Okay. So the summer of pain, the summer of agony, I'm just going to go out there, and in my head, Irving is crying during this summer. Okay. I don't know if he did or not, and you don't have to say whether he did or not, but in my head, he did. In my head, he did. All right. So what happened during that summer of terror?
All right. So basically it was this, Irving and I are the same age. We're 2 days apart. He's my best friend since we were 6 years old. The summer going into our senior year, we were both on the wrestling team. I wrestled all 4 years of high school. Irving started his junior year. As you heard in the last episode, he started to start his weight loss journey. His junior year of high school, he lost a bunch of weight doing wrestling, but he wasn't necessarily successful at wrestling itself. So he was tired of losing, and the way things were looking that upcoming year, I didn't have a partner, right? And so my goals for my senior year was to win state and do all these different things, and the drill partner that you have in a wrestling room throughout the season is imperative to your success. And so Irving was pretty much the next guy in line because my longtime partner was going through like fire science classes and all these different things to become a firefighter. So he really wasn't in the room. So with him wanting to be better at wrestling and me needing a partner, I said, look, dude, like, you know, if you want to get better at wrestling, I'll get you there. But I'm not joking when I'm saying this is going to be the worst summer of your life, period. And to this day, it still holds true. And so basically, like my junior year, there's a couple times when Irving was my partner, right? And when it comes to wrestling, if you're going to be like good and you're going to get a good workout, you kind of have to be a dick, right? Like you kind of have to throw your kind heart and shit out the window for about like 2.5 hours if you want to get something out of it. Again, sorry for my French. And so the few times where Irving was my partner my junior year, I mean, the reality of it is, and I'm not talking shit because he'll say it to your face too, he was so out of shape. I mean, most of the practice was him just getting off the ground, you know, like whenever I was going partners with Irving my junior year, I was like, thank God, now I can take a day off because like I'm so tired from yesterday's meet or yesterday's practice. Like, thank God I'm going with Irving today because he can't keep up with me, right? And so, sorry, Irving. And so, with that said, he didn't like being the guy that was holding me back, right? He knew how high my goals were and what I wanted to accomplish. And with him being the next guy in line to take that spot, he took the initiative to do what it took to become what I can tell you was my best drilling partner that I have ever had, period. And basically that summer, I went into the summer going to my senior year with the mentality of, okay, my junior year of wrestling, I did pretty good. I got 5th in state. So I was thinking about it. How am I going to train for my senior year? Well, I was like, I could do the same thing that I did leading into my junior year, but how can I do the same thing that I did leading into my junior year and expect different results? I need to find something new that's going to push myself mentally and physically to a new height if I want to jump those 1, 2, 3, 4 places to that first place on the podium. And so with me, wrestling's once you get the technique, it's more mental than everything. And so anything that you can do to find a mental edge where you're like 1 or 2 steps ahead mentally of your opponent is huge. And so for me, I'm like, well, I want to do something that I know for a fact none of my opponents will have done, period. So when I step on a mat with my opponent, I know for a fact that I did something that nobody else did, and I worked harder than everybody else did because I chose to do my very first bodybuilding show that summer. And the fact of the matter is, yes, nobody that I went against did a bodybuilding show that summer. Nobody that I went against dieted all summer, did hours of cardio a day, rode their bike 10 miles a day, practiced wrestling, lifted weights, all these different things. Nobody else did that. And so when I was on the mat my senior year, yeah, I had a bunch of confidence because I'm like, dude, I suffered my whole entire summer starving myself, and why should I lose to you? What did you do to or deserve to beat me? And so that was the mindset. But in the midst of all that, there's somebody named Irving that had to suffer because of it because, well, it was my first very hard weight cut, you could say, or just very hard strategic diet. Just very low calories, very plain and very bland foods. Your very lean meats and veggies and all that. 6 meals a day, all that good stuff. And me being young and immature and not knowing how to handle that type of added responsibility, I'm more than happy and willing to say that I did not handle it with the maturity that I should have, and I let a lot of my bad energy go on to my closest friends because they were around me the whole time. And Irving, because he was my partner, took the brunt of it all because he was the person I could physically put my hands on during the time. And although it did have a purpose, because I told him, like I said, if you want to get good at wrestling, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be the toughest summer of your life. I will say that there's probably an added extra 5 to 10% of aggression that could have been held off if, say, I had a hamburger before practice, right? So, but I didn't. And basically, with that being said, there's something called hand fighting when it comes to wrestling. Basically, what it is you can compare it to open hand striking, right? You're clubbing on their head, you're pushing them around, there's no remorse or anything, and it's basically a fight. And the fact of the matter is, Irving was just at a level that was lower than me at the time, and I held nothing back with him because I knew that if I pushed him to his limits and then I beat the shit out of him, he was going to come out a better, stronger man at the end. Because going through the journey that he has is more than just physical. It's more than just telling yourself you're going to die. You have to mentally be there, because if you're not mentally strong enough to endure all of that, you're not going to accomplish anything with your life. It's mental first and physical second. If you're mentally not there, physically you're not going to be there either. You can't have physical before mental. So, there'd be times where we would, so I held him to everything. I'd wake his ass up. We ride our bikes to Mountain Ridge, our high school, which is about 5 miles away. We do an hour of conditioning with our wrestling team. So we'd be running bleacher with 45-pound plates over our head, like they're water and we're in Africa or whatever, just stuff like that. And, and then one day, we would run bleachers, and then our coach is like, all right, we're hand fighting. But we weren't hand fighting in the wrestling room this time. We're actually hand fighting in gravel for whatever reason that our coach thought that was a good idea. And to me, in my head, I'm like, okay, well, he said hand fighting, so I don't really care that we're on gravel. I'm still going to slam your face into the mat, the dirt. And this time in particular, we're hand fighting. Boom, boom, boom. Clubbed him to the back of his head. He went straight to the floor. His hands have pebbles and rocks lodged in them from trying to catch his fall. His lips bleeding, and maybe some of the viewers, well, did you ever say sorry? No, I never said sorry, and I never will say sorry. All I can tell Irving is that I'm sorry for anything disrespectful that I did or said in my anger. But as far as the wrestling and stuff like that goes, I'm not sorry for any of that. And he doesn't expect apology out of me either, because he knows it's a pivotal point in his life, and mine too. So later that practice, we go back into the wrestling room. We did our conditioning. We did the hand fighting. He has rocks in his hands now. And now we're back in the wrestling room, and the coach says, all right, we're hand fighting. And you can see the look on Irving's face, and he's like, oh, shit, or oh, F, or oh, whatever. And he's like, son of, and he knew I was coming at him full force. So this time in particular, I clubbed him in the back of the head. I shoved him down. I pushed him up against the wall, and he collapsed, and I just full on sprinted and shoved him again against the wall. It's not even wrestling at this point, right? And he specifically said, and again, excuse my French, feel free to bleep me out. But he specifically says, "Dude, what the fuck?" Right? And I'm like, you don't quit on me now. I get in his ear, I'm like in his ear. I'm like, you don't quit on me now. You're Irving Dominguez. This is what you wanted. You something effective like, if you quit now, everything that you just put in this summer is worth nothing. Do you hear me? And he didn't say anything to me at the time, but he got up and he finished the practice. And as he said in the episode, he was about ready to go home, cry, and quit, right? And never look back. So we rode our bikes home that day. We didn't say a lot to each other on the bike ride home that day. All I said to him was, when we got to my house, because we hit my house before he hit his, that same day where he was about to quit, I was like, all right, I'll see you at the gym at 6. And he's like, okay. And then he rides home. And basically the story goes, he rides home, he puts his bike away. He is so tired that he couldn't even make it to his bed. He collapsed on the floor, cries a little bit, and then goes to sleep. And we went to the gym later that day. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. And then just do that for 3 months. You know,
right,
that's
exactly.
that sounds fantastic. So Irving, that wasn't that bad, man. Come on. Oh my gosh, dude, that's crazy intense. But I also think that is a lesson for, if you want something, you can't BS yourself. Like, if you're lying to yourself, you know that you're lying to yourself. And so stop. Don't lie to yourself. Follow through to yourself on what you're going to do. And start with little things. Are you going to wake up when the alarm goes off? You know, and start building that discipline and hold yourself accountable to that, man. Dude, I absolutely, this has been a phenomenal episode, and I thank you. I thank you for coming on, man. I've learned a lot. Your stories and everything like that. I just know so many people are gonna be blessed by it. You know, before we go, where can people find you on Instagram? Where can they find How Strong? Where could they find you on the interwebs, man?
All right. So on Instagram, you can find me at the letter J House 182. Our Instagram page is Team House Strong. On TikTok, I'm Jimmy_House. Snapchat, J House 182. Facebook, Jimmy House. MySpace, I'm still holding off. I'll get back to you guys what my username is going to be on there. But and let's see, what else do I got? YouTube, we got Jimmy House, and then stay tuned. This April, we will be launching the House Strong website, so you guys can buy apparel. So I'll be posting about that as well.
Awesome. Well, as we come to the end of the episode here, thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. And every single episode, you know what I tell you, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review, not because need more subscribers. You guys know it's not because of that. It's because if stories like Jimmy's are going to get out there, those are the rules of the game. That's how people find out about it. That's how people click listen. And, thank you guys so much. Do not forget, today, do something to make yourself proud, okay? And you know what, Jimmy? You said you were on TikTok. For the people on YouTube who are going to watch this video, you want to take us out on a whoa, man? Hit that whoa.
Uh-oh.
Let's see.
Well, this is awkward because, so what is a whoa?
That's
Irving's going to laugh. Oh, okay. Oh, no, okay. Irving does this all the time.
Oh, what? There we go. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
Take it easy, guys. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.